fire, and down! It's complete down at the goal line by San Diego! Tomlinson, off the left side, Tomlinson sidestep. Hello, history books. I think they have to now. Here's Sproles. Sproles inside the 10, inside the 5, and the Chargers win the game.
What's up, good people? Second podcast of the week. Today, we are doing external free agents. You saw internal free agents on, what was that, Monday? Go back and watch that to see where we think the Chargers should re-sign and or let their current free agents walk. And today, Jamie, Craig, and myself are all going to give our top 4 free agents. If you saw our free agent list for our free agent list, our schedule, for this offseason, we were going to split this up in offense and defense. We decided to combine them both into this one show now. It is actually a good thing after looking at this class extensively because I don't know, we could have stretched that very far with both offense and defense. So here we are to do our top 4. We're going to go 4-1 on our favorite free agents this offseason. That makes sense for the Chargers, and also, we are going to be financially responsible. We will not be Madden GMs today. You will not see us sign anybody that the Chargers will not realistically at least consider this free agent period. So, with that said, are you boys ready? Everybody ready?
Yeah,
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's start with Craig. Craig, we're going 4-1. Free agent, we're doing both offense and defense. We're going to combine it. So, who is your 4th ranked free agent according to you, top flight?
Okay, so quick question. Are we talking about offensively? Are we splitting it up? Just want to make sure offense and then defense, or is just top to bottom combined for it? Okay, gotcha.
This is your top 4 overall.
So top 4 overall consist of...
Just give me 4.
No. Gotcha. Out of the way. So at number 4...
Out of the way? That's not a good start.
Well, no, I mean,
we're not even 3 minutes in.
I'm just being realistic, man, because we talked about it. You mentioned it. Some of this stuff ain't pretty.
Yeah.
As far as the top 4 is concerned, some guys that I think make sense. Andre James, center.
Hold on. I still don't think you're understanding, Craig.
What am I doing?
You're going to give your number 4, then we're each going to give our number 4, and then we're going to work our way up the ladder.
Yeah. And we're not going offense and defense. We're doing it together. So combine your whatever 8 to your favorite 4. So how about? All right, you got it, or you want me to go to Jamie?
No. Start it over. One of you guys started because I'm hearing 2 different things.
All right.
It's
Jamie,
been a long day. It's been a long day, fellas. Go for it.
Me too, man.
It's been a long week.
Yeah. Jamie's not even in his screen. He's ready to fall asleep. He's like way down here.
No, I'll play catch up. I'm clearly hearing this wrong.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Jamie.
All right. So as Garrett mentioned, we're not being Madden GM, so we're not looking to spend top of the line money on every single position, but we are looking to fill holes at positions of need with guys who we think make sense either financially or scheme fit, or maybe there's a bargain to be had. So I'm worried about edge, as I think most of us are. Mm-hmm. So I have 2 edge players in my top 4.
No, you're not paying attention. You're not doing it right either. What do we not follow directions? That's a top 5. What do you mean 2?
5 minutes in and we're off the rails already.
It's not a top 5. I have 4 overall.
And there's 2 at number 4?
No, I have 2 edges in my group in my overall top 4.
Okay,
I'm not going to list them both now. I'm just saying I'm focused on edge.
Jamie,
you're just not listening.
No. Well, thanks everybody. That's been the show. We're sorry.
Let me try this again.
I have 4. Here's 2. Okay, go ahead.
No.
Got you.
So I'm going
to mute myself.
In my top 4, I have 2 edge players. I'm going to list one now. Okay, so I started out looking for guys who I thought could step in and start at edge, and I have somebody who I think fits that bill. at number 4, I have somebody who is probably more of a rotational edge rusher, but might outperform a contract that he's going to get in this marketplace and won't require a huge amount of money in terms of guarantees or a long-term contract. This is former Bills edge rusher AJ Epinesa, somebody who Harbaugh is going to be really familiar with because he coached against him at Michigan. He's coming off a 6.5 sack season for Buffalo. He's not going to cost a ton of money, but he's been steadily on the rise in terms of getting to the quarterback the last few years. And I think he's a guy who is probably going to command a 2 to 3 year deal. So I think it makes sense to bring him in as like an edge 3, potentially. And that deal to me looks like about 3 years, $23 million with $15 million guaranteed. You backload it, so it really looks like a 2 year deal with an out clause, probably with like a roster bonus or something built in year 3 to give them a reason to cut him if he's not performing. But you're talking about less than $8 million for a guy who had 6.5 sacks last year. And I think he's probably going to ascend and probably outperform that contract by the end of the 3 years. So my number 4 is AJ Epinesa. He comes in as probably an edge 3, but with an opportunity to play a lot because Bosa's never on the field, and he'll probably get more snaps than he really has ever before and outperform the contract that I'm suggesting.
Okay. My apologies, Jamie. Thank you for clearing that up. That is my fault. I thought you were listening to here, but yeah, edge was I'm definitely concerned about edge. I know right now they're deep, but we'll see what they're going to do with Bosa and Mac. And even if they do keep Bosa, like Jamie mentioned, is he going to stay healthy? I didn't have an edge in my 4. If I had a 5th, which we're not doing, there was an edge I was going to go for, but my number 4 is a safety, because I feel like free safety has plagued this roster for a very long time. And I understand that the Chargers want to stop the run, and I know that's going to be very important, but I feel like the back end has been an issue for a long, long time. And I feel like with this defense, there is a guy, it is the Giant safety Xavier McKinney, who I like a lot. He can play both safety spots. He did with the Giants. He played a lot of free safety. If Mentor uses that kind of 3 safety look that he's done in the past with some 2 read coverages, I think this is going to be a really nice piece in his defense. He had his best year last year. He's only 24, so a young guy. He moved around a lot, but for me, I felt like his best game while watching him was as a free safety for the Giants, kind of being a backstop on the back end. He's got really good athleticism, and my favorite part, he is a very, very good tackler. He's only missed 7.8% of his tackle attempts over his career. That is top 10 in that time among safeties. So very, very good and dependable guy on the back end. So not only does he do well as a free safety, as kind of a center fielder, he does a nice job turning the ball over too. So, this to me is a move that you're paying for kind of a future production, which really feels like it's on the upswing. The Chargers could definitely use another safety who can cover from sideline to sideline. McKinney is that guy. He's a rotational safety that could play downhill in the box. He could be a center fielder as well, a really nice movable piece. He's not just one, stick him in the back end and leave him there. You can move him around, switch him up with Derwin. I think he's a really good player, but I don't think he's going to get top dollar, because the first 2 years, he didn't really put up a bunch of production, had a little kind of small out breakout party last year or the year before in 2022. 2023 is really where he really broke out. So while he's being young, he didn't consistently play like in the box or strong safety. So he's not going to get like a ton of money like the strong safety class does. So for me, I think they're probably going to peg him more as a free safety market. So I think he's probably going to get above what Marcus May got, which was 7.5 million, but below what Quandre Diggs got, which was 14 million. That's a lot. I've got him pegged for a 4-year, $40 million deal, which is 10 million per year. You get a little ripcord after the second year, but I understand some people might be rolling their eyes because you're tying up a lot of money in safeties. But for me, this is my 4th, and this is in a very good free agent class. but I'm slotting McKinney in the back end. I think he would really help. I think he's kind of a movable, I don't want to say chess piece because I feel like that's overused, but a guy that could definitely play in the box. He could play some kind of hybrid linebacker role there at the second level, and he's really, really good on the back end. And I think the Chargers really need some help in this free safety spot. Alohi Gilman's not good enough. He hasn't been good enough. I would sign a guy like Xavier McKinney, the free safety for the Giants. He is my number 4.
Okay, so for me, Jamie kind of spoke to this already. It's interesting though, but we know that the edge position is something that the Chargers are going to have to pay close attention to because of the fact that we don't exactly know what direction they're going to go with regard to who's going to stay and who goes. It makes it a little tough to determine the type of player you might want there and the type of contract that you want to give them. My idea here is to get as young and as cheap as possible in as many of these spots as you can. Hopefully these are productive players. Of course, you don't want just bodies. So my number 4 is going to be Josh Uche from the Patriots. And there's also that Michigan connection there, having played under Harbaugh. We're talking about a guy who's more of a situational rusher. So because of that, I think he blends in with whomever sticks around. If it's a scenario where you've got Bosa instead of Mack, he can come in and be a part of that 3-man rotation. Well, actually 4-man if you consider the additional pass rusher. Who is he a string bean still? What is he now this year? I don't remember. Whatever.
Asparagus. That was last year.
Broccoli at this point, maybe a little thicker, but regardless, Uche fits in there as a pass rusher, and really what I find is significant when we're talking about the front is the Chargers don't have enough disruptors. And there's a little bit of a trend here as I get into my 4 a little bit deeper, that there are some options there to create like some temporary fixes as they build the roster out. I appreciate the fact that Uche is really explosive off of the edge, though he might not do a ton with regard to holding up against the run, setting a solid edge. He will get after the quarterback. Not stellar numbers this season. He only had 3 sacks and 8 solo tackles. But again, we're talking about somebody who's more of a spot duty type player. So getting him in the mix, allowing him to, run the hoop, get to the quarterback, maybe getting him in a couple of NASCAR sets, things of that nature. I think he'll be able to shine, and he could earn potentially a longer term contract. What I think can happen here is if he shows up and as far as the numbers are concerned, sorry, I lost my contract here. Where did we go? I think I had him down for, bear with me here, fellas. I am having technical difficulties.
If you find the numbers, you can just give it to us.
Yeah. So actually, I remember something off the top of my head. I believe it was more like 2 years, 14 mil. But really, I was leaning more towards like a 1-year prove it deal. So somewhere around 7 or so, which might sound a little steep for a player who's only going to be part-time. But again, I think when you're talking about having someone who can come in and be productive, you want to spend at those premium positions. And if it costs you a little bit more for that production, I'm perfectly fine with it. I just think that Uche has an opportunity to come in with familiarity with the scheme and, the level of athleticism that he possesses to make a real difference really early. And again, it doesn't matter who they keep at the edge, whether it's Bosa or Mack, he'd be a nice complement to either or.
Uchi's an interesting one. He's kind of hard to peg. I've seen projections for him anywhere from like 1 year, 7 to 10 million to 5 years, 75 million. I mean, he's 1 year removed from 11 sacks. So it's kind of hard to know how teams are going to value him and what the premium that teams put on pass rushers. I mean, it's easy to see a team throwing way too much money at him. So I kind of steered away, but he's a good player and he'd be really nice as a rotational pass rusher. Just kind of hard to peg contract wise because you're not really sure what you're getting and how teams are going to value him.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, edge is always tricky because it is a premium position. So there's typically you're not going to be somebody who comes in and sets the market. He doesn't have that type of background or production, but they're valuable. And when you can find somebody who can get after the quarterback, there is a tendency to sometimes overpay for them. But I think that, again, by him having familiarity with the scheme and Harbaugh, there could maybe be the opportunity for him to come in and not be anticipating higher than what he should be being paid. And maybe we're talking about somebody who's willing to sign a 1 year somewhere in between maybe 5 to 7 mil. Maybe he takes a little bit less to get back with Harbaugh, and he thinks that if he can get in that defensive scheme and shine, he can earn a larger contract, whether it's elsewhere or with the Chargers moving forward. So it's a really good opportunity if he wants to take it.
All right, Jamie, let's go number 3.
So my number 3 is another edge player, somebody who I've been high on for a long time and is coming off of an injury plagued season in which he was not very productive, and that is Carl Lawson. Somebody who I've always liked. I loved him coming out, was a big fan of his early in his career. He's been kind of up and down, but he has shown the ability to be very productive. He's explosive off the edge. He defends the run. He can get after the quarterback. Just had a down injured season this year. And he's a guy who probably is not going to get a multi-year deal. He's probably looking at a deal kind of like what Yannick Ngakoue got last year, which was, I think, 1 year, like $10.5 million. Maybe you add a second year with him and hope he outplays that first year kind of a thing. But Lawson's a guy who I think if you slot him in as edge 3, you're really, really happy. And if he's healthy and motivated, you're probably looking at a guy who could step in and be edge 1 or edge 2, depending on what happens with Bosa and how Thule develops. There's a guy who I think could add some productivity, some toughness, and maybe some leadership to the edge room. So I have him at 2 years, $25 million with $18 million guaranteed. Most of that money is tied up into year 2. Maybe you guarantee most or all of his base salary in year 1 to get him to take the deal, and you sweeten it with that second year. But Lawson's a guy who I think he's going to land somewhere and he's going to be really productive, and it's probably not going to be on more than a 2-year deal. So there's an opportunity to steal some productivity, and again, sign a guy who, at least in my opinion, has a really good chance to outperform the contract that he winds up signing this offseason. And then maybe you're looking at a guy that you want to extend and spread some money around after year 1. So my number 3 is Carl Lawson.
All right. Craig?
So sticking with the defensive theme here, my number 3 is actually going to be at linebacker. And again, there's a little bit of a trend here. The Chargers need to build up through the middle of their defense. So they're definitely missing pieces all around the board, but specifically up the middle, they need to get stronger and they could use a vet presence. Jamie, you're probably going to like this one. It's a guy that you were fond of here, I think just last year with regards to signing free agents, and that's Azeez Al-Shaair. Recently with the Tennessee Titans. Before was with the 49ers, kind of got lost in the mix there, playing between like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. But we're talking about a guy who's a downhill thumper, and the Chargers absolutely need that in the middle of their defense. They're going to need an enforcer, and Shahir is not afraid to do that. He's someone who gets off of blocks pretty well. As far as coverage is concerned, probably not the best there, but hopefully you have a linebacker that did not play very much last year. That's his strength. He can play next to, and I think they'll be able to complement off of each other very well. But as far as Shahir is concerned, you're talking about somebody who's not afraid to stick his nose in there and get dirty, stopping the run, whether it be attacking the edge, looping around, making plays on the edge, running sideline to sideline, or taking on a guard, just blowing a play up, maybe even sacrificing himself so that a teammate can make a play. But as far as Shahir is concerned, I don't think it's going to take a whole lot to get him signed. I'd be willing to give him, let's say, like a 2-year deal, somewhere in the vicinity of about, say like 16, 17 mil total. So it's somebody who can come in and, again, earn a larger contract, but at the very least, he can fill a gap if you're still looking to draft and develop guys behind him. So you're not committing to him long term, but he's productive enough to get in there and make a difference to where, like, you've got, a solid stopgap, if not necessarily a star. I don't expect him to be that, but just somebody who's solid, who can come in, be productive, and won't cost you an arm and a leg. So that would be my number 4, Azeez Al-Shaair. Shaair. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but,
Al-Shaair. No, you got it. You're there. He was just outside of my top 4. Jamie and I both of us were on our list last year for sure.
Yep.
Very, very good player. And linebacker is a big need. All right. So for me, this is going to be my only offensive player. My top 4 is here at number 3. and it is the right tackle, a guy that popped up on Twitter today. It is Mike Owenu, the Patriots right tackle. I feel like, to me, this is the kind of body type and player that really fits the Greg Roman, Harbaugh, even Ortiz type. It's really in that mold, and they would love this guy in their system. He's a road grader, 6'3", 350. He's played both left and right guard before landing at right tackle this past season. Owenu had his best season. He was ranked top 10 among tackles in almost every statistical category this year. He was most notably only allowed 3 sacks and 2 QB hits in his 505 pass blocking snaps. While he was a guard last year, he was the 3rd best guard in the NFL among pressure rate, which was at 2.2%. He's a real ascending O lineman without that kind of like true name recognition with some of these offensive linemen. So for me, I think this would be a great fit. He slides in a right tackle. You put Trey Pipkins in as your swing tackle this season, and then you just pull that ripcord for Pipkins next offseason, and you've at least got some really good depth at your tackle spots. And you've got a O-lineman who's versatile. He's going to be right tackle this season. He could kick inside if, for whatever reason, Zion or Salyer don't work out in the system. But to me, the biggest part of this and why I like it is you check that O-line box right now. You don't have to worry about it during the draft. Another plus is that he played at Michigan with Harbaugh. So there are some times there, but you're going to improve the protection. You're going to improve the run game. You're going to help Herbert out. And because he's only had 1 season at right tackle, his market value probably won't be as high as a lot of other tackles on the market. I've got him pegged at the Jack Conklin deal that he had with the Browns, which is 4 years, $60 million. So I'm right there at 460, give him 15 million annually. You've got your right tackle locked up. If not, you've got a very, very good guard spot locked up. For me, I know a lot of people don't like tackle, especially a right tackle at number 5 in the draft. This basically wipes it off the board. You've got your 5 set, except for center, which is something they can get, in the second round and on in the draft, or depending on what you guys think, maybe a veteran center. But the fact that you can get right tackle locked up right away before the draft, you don't have to maybe reach for a guy like Joe Alt, who a lot of people don't like, or that Penn State tackle either. You can just get your tackles done with. You've got your guard set. You worry about center, and you only have 1 hole to fill in the offensive line instead of 2 heading into the draft. So I've got Mike Owenu as my number 3. Jamie, let's move forward.
So my number 2 is my only offensive player.
Okay.
And it's somebody who has Harbaugh ties, somebody who's played at a high level for a couple of years now. And that is former Lions offensive lineman Graham Glasgow, former walk-on at Michigan, a guy who signed a big deal a couple of years ago. I forget who it was with, but signed a big deal a couple of years ago, wound up getting cut for cap purposes, went back to Detroit, was a part of one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the league. I like Graham for a couple of reasons. 1, obviously the Harbaugh familiarity. 2, he's played all 3 interior offensive line positions in the NFL, and he's played them all quite well. And I think he gives you some flexibility. I'm kind of a believer that the Chargers are going to take a center probably relatively early in the draft this year, probably in either round 2 or 3. But signing a guy like Graham Glasgow gives you some options. You can put him at right guard. If Zion falters, you can put him at left guard. If you're not able to get the center you want, you can put him at center and buy yourself another year. He's not going to require a ton of money. You can probably get him on like a 3-year deal. I've got him at 3 years, $25 million with $12 million guaranteed. I feel like there's some leadership there. I don't believe that both guard spots are set. I'm not sure that Salyer is going to stick, and I'm still not sure what to make of Zion at this point. So having somebody who can slide in at all 3 guard spots, or all 3 interior spots, I think gives the Chargers a lot of value and a lot of flexibility. And it just gives them somebody who has proven himself to be really good in the running game and more than capable pass protector on the interior. Gives you some leadership, some playoff experience along the line. and it just kind of solidifies the interior. And also, you kind of get that built-in mentor for a young center, for somebody who's played center at the NFL level. So a lot of value there, a lot of advantages to signing Glasgow. And he's only 31. He's still in his physical prime for an offensive lineman. So I feel like he's a guy who can give you 2, maybe 3 solid years. And he's not going to cost a ton. So probably not a guy that you're going to necessarily have to worry cutting after year 2. But that's my number 2 is Graham Glasgow.
So talk to me about a plan here. So if you sign Glasgow, are you letting him work? Are you basically having a 3-man rotation to camp to see who wins the 2 guard spots, and then you click Glasgow down, or what are you thinking?
I would probably go into the season with Glasgow competing at right guard and center. Probably with the idea that ideally you want him at right guard. But like I said, if you can't find the center that you want in the draft, he gives you that flexibility and gives you another year to kick the can down the road, so to speak. But that's how I would do it. I would have, you've got Hymas, you've got McFadden. Both those guys can compete at both guard spots. They could compete at center if you're not able to find a center as well. And Glasgow gives you just a ton of flexibility and immediate veteran presence in the middle of that line, which I think they really missed with Lindsley out last year.
All right, Craig.
Yep. So thinking about, again, positions of need and maybe some areas that the Chargers can look to fill that they probably can't realistically completely fix within the draft. And I think they need help at cornerback, clearly. You've got a bunch of guys heading out. We don't know what the contract situations look like, who's going to be brought back. I think we have a pretty fair idea of who won't be. But I'm looking at number 2, Kenny Moore, cornerback from the Indianapolis Colts. And here's the thing, as far as my thought process goes here, when talking about defensive scheme, Jesse Minter ran a significant amount of cover 3 at Michigan. And so Kenny Moore comes over from the Colts, where I know, guys, brace yourselves, Gus Bradley ran a bunch of cover 3, which we are familiar with. But the Colts were a relatively decent defense, and Kenny Moore was a high performer in that scheme. He's not ideal size-wise. We're talking about somebody who's sub 5'10", but he plays much bigger than his size. Comes downhill aggressively as a tackler, is not afraid to play tough coverage against bigger wide receivers. He may not win every rep, but he's going to compete, and it's not going to be an easy day for him. I mean, again, his athleticism helps him in that regard, but also the fact that he's just someone who's fearless, and you need that at the corner position. We've come off of seasons, and not to bag on the dude, but Mike Davis may have 1 or 2 bad reps, and it could potentially follow him for the rest of the game and set the tone for him and his performance or lack thereof. Kenny Moore is a one play and forget it guy. If he gets beat next rep, he's probably coming back and winning that one, and he's going to put together consistent downs. He's going to be solid in pass coverage. He's going to be a significant defender in the run game. He's not afraid to do that. I mean, you could place him in the slot if you want to go about it that way, but he can play some outside receiver. He's not going to be a liability as far as someone just beating him over the top. So again, like I said before, he has enough athleticism to stick with some of the more higher end athletes at the wide receiver position. But I just think in this draft, where the Chargers are probably more than likely going to have to draft a few cornerbacks to come in and develop, this is somebody you can stick in there and count on him to give you at least, a few seasons of solid production. I think he's around 30 years old, might actually be 30 now. So he's kind of teetering along that age where the play starts to drop off, but I think you can get a solid few seasons out of him, which is why I would give him, like, let's say a 2-year deal for about somewhere in between 6 to 7 mil per. So like 13, 14 mil for 2 years. And I think that makes sense. And it's another guy that you might be able to put one of those ripcord deals on for the second year in the event that play does start to drop off a bit. But the idea that I have here in building this out is you want to get as many guys that have productive years left, maybe just a few, no one who's over the hill, but also aren't going to cost you a ton. So if you can't get them young, you can get them a little bit older to where you can get a couple years out of them, but still be looking to build behind them, which we believe this regime will do, as far as depth is concerned and developing players. So I think Moore steps in, does a phenomenal job wherever you want to place him. And then, after a year or two, you want to move on to whoever else you have next in the farm system, then go for it. But I don't think Moore would be a liability at all. And again, doesn't cost you a ton. So it just makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very nice, cost-effective move, and a move that a position rather that they're going to need to fill a couple times over. So they're going to have to get a corner in free agency one way or the other, whether it's a vet or a younger guy, whatever they do, they're going to have to get another corner. So makes a ton of sense. And I like him. I did consider him for sure. All right. Number 2 for me. And I love this because we haven't repeated anybody yet. We got 9 total guys, all different.
I was sure that was going to happen at least twice.
It always does.
We were going to repeat? Yeah. I thought we were all going to pick one that we all like. Okay. Well, let's see if you guys like this one. Maybe you have this one. The Chargers this offseason are going to want to run the ball, and they're going to want to stop the run. That's going to be a big emphasis on both sides of the ball. And there's no man that has been at the top of the class of run stuffers in the NFL and quietly been one of the best, and that is DJ Reader, who is a free agent from the Bengals. I love DJ Reader. I wanted him on the Chargers when he was a free agent after leaving the Texans before signing with the Bengals. But I mean, he always wins with leverage. He is a massive load to move in the run game. He absorbs double teams consistently. He was an anchor in that Bengals D line that helped stop the run. Statistically, he has not lost a step. He was on the verge of matching a career year this season, except he got injured in the middle of it. And to me, it feels like a sneaky good move because there's a lot of top end run stuffers in this class. Chris Jones, which who knows if he'll even hit the market, but Chris Jones, Justin Matabuke, Christian Wilkins, Leonard Williams. So it just feels like there's those top guys. And then I feel like DJ Reader is going to slip in on that second wave of guys. And also Reader tore his quad in week 15. So that might hurt his market a little bit. And he's 29. So for me, it feels like teams might not jump at him as they will with those other top guys. So this to me feels like a really, really good move. I think he's probably going to get what Dalvin Tomlinson got. It's about $14 million per year. I would sign him for 3 years, probably put a parachute after year 1 or 2, just because he's getting up there in age. But man, he does not look like he's lost a step at all. A very good run stuffer. If you want to stop the run, you need a man like DJ Reader, a veteran in the middle of that line, a man that's going to go and make everybody else better around him. This is just the move. I absolutely love DJ Reader. So for me, the contract's 3 year, $43 million, put in that parachute and help stop the run for once and get a big body in there. So I've got DJ Reader as number 2.
Yeah, Reader's a good one. He'd be fun in the middle of the defense. I feel like they're going to be, just based on the way the Ravens have been built in the past, I feel like they're going to be really working on finding cost-effective offensive linemen and defensive linemen and developing them. It just seems like that's how they've been winning.
How the Ravens did it.
Finding value in guys in the middle and late rounds and the offensive and defensive front, developing them, getting everything they could out of them, and then letting them go get paid somewhere else. So a Reader would be awesome. I'm not sure that they're going to go that route, but that would be awesome.
All right. Let's move on to number 1. Jamie, we've been going with you.
So, yep, I've been focused on cost-effective options, and this is the one option that I have where I'd be comfortable spending a little bit of money, and it's an area where I think they need to spend a little bit of money, and this is on cornerback. And I know they got burned spending money on a cornerback with J.C. Jackson, and they're still hurting from that, and they're probably going to be hurting from it for a while. But I feel like the play here is to go after Kansas City cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. He's a guy who is a high-end 2, maybe a cornerback 1, very physical. He can tackle, he can cover, good ball skills. He's not top of the market, so he's not going to command 18 to 20 million, but he's not going to come cheap either. And I feel like you add to your roster, you take away from a division rival, you get a really good football player and somebody who kind of settles down the secondary a little bit, because I feel like they're going to be in a position where they're going to be there. There's a very real possibility that they're going to be starting maybe 2 young corners if they don't get a corner in free agency this year. So getting somebody like Snead kind of takes some of the heat off of that group. And now you're just starting one outside corner who's on the younger side instead of two. So for me, it's Snead is a 4-year deal at $70 million, $45 million guaranteed, and you're putting in that parachute after year 3. Maybe you build one in after year 2 as well, just to give yourself some space. But Snead's a good football player, good ball skills. Like I said, he can run, he can cover, he can tackle. He does everything quite well, and he'd be a good addition to the secondary.
All right. They need to go
like
corner. No, I do. They need to go corner. So I totally understand going after. I get the thinking. Absolutely. You can't afford a guy like Jalen Johnson.
Nope.
So try to find somebody at least in that second tier, third tier that you can bring in. I totally get it.
He's still the number 1 corner. So, I mean, that's something you still lack right now. I know a lot of people out there are big ASJ fans. We all love Asante Samuel Jr. as well, but he's probably more of a mid to high end number 2 corner. So just having somebody out there that you can trust to defend. We just saw the playoff run. He had one of the best performances of any cornerback in the NFL against some high-end competition out there on the outside, and he more than held his own. So the Chargers absolutely need some of that wherever they can get it. And if they don't have to spend top of the market money, great, more power to them. But, again, if you don't get it here, then you're going to have to spend high draft capital to get something that could potentially work, whereas you have someone who's proven.
Yeah. And what was the deal for Snead, do you think, Jamie?
I had 4 years, $70 million with $45 million guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah, he's going to get a good chunk of change. All right, Craig?
Yeah, so this isn't a sexy pick, but thing that I think definitely has to happen, you can't miss on it here in the draft. And I don't necessarily want to have to spend high in draft capital on a center. So my guy is going to be Andre James. You're also stealing him from a division rival with the Raiders. James is actually a center who's rather adept at both the pass and run. So pass pro's not, something that he's going to be a liability at. And we also know how much the Raiders love to lean on that running game. So he's someone who's used to doing both. And again, we're talking about more of a hard-nosed, rugged guy. This kind of fits, I think, the new identity that the Chargers are looking to build here. This still kind of sort of feels, and he's a younger guy. He's only 26 years old. Yeah, 26. So we're talking about somebody that can develop and grow with Herbert for years to come. Or if you just want to have him around again for a few years while you draft someone maybe later that you can develop behind him to take over, then you're only paying him, I'm going to say, somewhere in the vicinity of, let's say, call it like a 3-year deal for around 9 to 10 mil per. So around 30 for 3 years. There's always that option for the 30-year ripcord. So it's just something that's built in there. But I think James is someone that can hold up really well in the middle of the line, helping Herbert with those protection calls. I think offensively, things are going to be simplified just a bit. So it's going to be advantageous for Herbert where he's making calls and he's not necessarily having to lean on the center to do it, but James is there to help out. He's shown that he has the ability to do that. And as far as communication goes, he looks to be great communicating with the rest of his offensive line. And again, you want someone who can hold the center and be rock solid and not necessarily have to go spend that type of draft capital in the draft on a center. I've just never been a fan of having to draft a center high just because there is as important of a position as it is. There are so many other high end positions the Chargers need to address. This is probably the one that if they can get taken care of before they get to draft, I'd be most appreciative of, because unless you're talking about a trade back scenario where you can get a center with one of those additional picks, I don't want to have a situation where you're sticking and picking and you're forced to find a center that you think you can depend on there in like the second or third round. It's not something that I would want to do. So if you can take care of that beforehand, I think this is probably, again, one of the better ones to do it with. He's near the top of the market. I think probably the best center or the one that would be the highest paid, but he would be coming off of an injury, would be Connor Williams. So technically that places Andre James more so towards the top. But again, I don't think you can skim on a position that's that important And if the offense is going to be predicated on the run, you have to have somebody, well, leaning more so on the run, more balanced. You're going to have somebody who can do both and is a good communicator with the quarterback and the rest of the offensive line. So James fits that bill for me. And again, 3-year deal max. If he continues to grow and improve, I think he literally had just his best season as a pro this last year. If that continues and he climbs, then yeah, I mean, if you want to re-sign him, fine. But again, you always have that option to continue building the team out, which they will do. I'm confident in that. And you get a younger center here in the draft, maybe draft him late, continue to develop him. And after that 3rd year or after year 2, you can start the new regime at center there. So I'm good with James as my number 1. Again, not sexy, but it takes care of a major need and you don't have to spend the draft capital on it.
Yeah, and there's talks about a lot of centers going in the 1st round. There's none worth the 5th overall pick. But if you think about, having 2 or 3 the top end centers going before you're even going to be able to pick in the 2nd round, it makes sense to take care of that center because they're just in a funny spot. They're in the top end. So it makes a ton of sense to be able to just take care of that now and get it out of the way. I thought about it. Connor Williams was definitely on my honorable mentions list.
Yeah, no, he's coming off of, I think it was a pretty significant injury and it was later in the year. So you don't really want to play around with that, not knowing what he's going to be as far as availability is concerned, what level of play you're going to get from him going into next year. Just want somebody that's dependable for Herbert because, I mean, the dude's been set back enough when we're talking about just changing scheme, philosophy, coaching staff. So get him someone who's consistent and ready to go from day one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get the idea and I totally understand trying to take care of it before the draft, which is part of the reason why I have my guy at number 1 and our top 4, no repeats at all. I absolutely love it. So my number 1, this to me feels like the biggest need for the Chargers. And just kind of peeking at the draft class this year, linebacker is not all that strong. So I don't want to go into the season with most likely not Kenneth Murray, probably cutting Eric Kendricks. And if you do keep Eric Kendricks, what do you really have in him anyway? You've got Henley and then a bunch of guys. So for me, my number 1 is the linebacker from the Panthers is Frankie Louvu. Mm-hmm. Now, Louvu is a guy that started his career as a practice squad guy with the Jets, became the captain of the defense for the Panthers last season. He's had back-to-back seasons with over 5.5 sacks, over 110 tackles, over 10 tackles for loss. He is a downhill run stuffer. He's been in top 10 in that category the last 2 seasons. He is a absolute weapon as a blitzer at his off-ball spot. He's a physical playmaker. Louvu, basically just give Louvu the mic, give him the green dot, and just watch your second level improve tremendously. I just feel like the Chargers cannot go into the draft needing to draft a starting linebacker and hope that they can just make some noise in this defense with how important and what a focal point it is in a Harbaugh-style defense. Linebacker is so important. So give it to a guy who already has a captain of a defense already. You have a veteran presence who's young enough to make a difference and impact your defense. So for me, I think Louvu has a contract a lot like Devondre Campbell, got with the Packers, but not really that many years. He's 27, so he's young-ish. I've got a 4-year, $46 million deal. That's 11.5 per year. I think the fit is right. I think attacking this linebacker group in free agency is the way to go. And I don't think you could wait until the draft to draft a linebacker win. 2nd, 3rd round. I mean, there's so many big needs on this roster. Being able to get a captain of your defense in free agency, a veteran presence to play off-ball linebacker in this defense, a guy who's athletic and plays downhill and is physical. I want that in my defense. So for me, I've got Frankie Louvu. He is my number 1. So for everybody in the chat, here it is. I put together a list while you guys were all goofing around. Craig, Andre James, Kenny Moore, Alziz Al-Shir, and Edge Josh Uche, I think.
Uche Wally.
Right.
Sorry.
Jamie, Legarius Sneed, Graham Glasgow, Carl Lawson, and AJ Epinesa. Man, why couldn't we pick names that we could pronounce? Me, I've got linebacker Frankie Louvu, DJ Reader, Mike Onwenu, and Xavier McKinney. Let us know in the chat which one you guys like the most, because that's important.
I almost had Louisville on my list. It
Okay.
really was between he and Al Shair. It just came down to cost.
Yeah.
But I really wanted Louisville on that list. He was actually one of my favorites.
Yeah. All right. So let's go. So this is your realistic free agent list. All 12. Thank you for staying with me while I do the math. 12 players. All 12 players, all very reasonable picks. I could see any of these guys being cited by the Chargers, and quite honestly feels like a little bit of a cost-effective move, each one of these. Guys that aren't top-end free agents, aren't going to cost a ton of money, but guys that can come in right away and contribute. I like all these guys. I can make a list. I can make an argument for any one of these guys that they picked, and of course the 4 that I picked, because I obviously picked them. So we did not include any running backs in our list. Jamie,
I almost did.
You did?
I mean,
I almost did. I considered it just because they probably need to come out of free agency with at least one.
Okay.
I just couldn't
Do you have
bring
a name?
myself to spend money on a running back.
Yeah, me neither. Do you have a name?
I was looking at extremely cost-effective options. So I guys that kind of stuck out to me as options were Gus Edwards, just because of his familiarity with the Ravens rushing attack, or with Roman's rushing attack. I also looked at Devin Singletary, guys who were kind of low to mid price range, but I couldn't bring myself to spend money on a running back, and I almost had 2 linebackers on my list, but I could not bring myself to spend money on a linebacker either.
And who were those linebackers?
I was looking at more like mid-level guys. Like I had Josie Jewell.
Oh, okay.
Considered him just because I think he's a good player, and he can do, he can cover and tackle, and he's smart and he makes plays. And he wouldn't be too expensive, just as a 1 or 2 year filler.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't looking at like higher end options.
Yeah.
Yeah, running back almost made my list also. So looking at Zach Moss, honestly, is someone who would be a part of a running back by committee. He fared really well last season, especially early, while was that Jonathan, what's his face?
Taylor.
Colts Taylor. While Taylor was out, holding out with that situation, with the contract, he did really well as the lead back while he was out. And of course, he kind of got lost in the shuffle there a little bit as the season went on, as Taylor came back in. But he's somebody that wouldn't have costed a ton. And also, again, depending on how they want to build this backfield out, is someone who's productive, that in a pinch, or has shown that, like, if you need to lean on him a little bit, that he can maybe carry the load for a few weeks while you get everything else situated, or guys come back from injury, or whatever the situation may be. So he was this close to making the list, but I couldn't bring myself to put a running back in top 4.
So we like this chat. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was just going to say, if I was going to sign a running back, it'd be on like a 2 year deal, and I probably wouldn't want to spend more than like $5 million on him. So I would not be looking to give Jacobs like a 3 or 4 year deal for $10+ million. There's just no way.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. The name that just kept floating that I can't get out of my head is Gus Edwards.
There are a few players. Yeah.
It's just like that down. If you want a downhill run, grind out yards, you want a guy like Gus Edwards in your running back rotation. And that just
that's why he was almost on my list. Physical, downhill runner, effective in the red zone, effective in short yardage. He was the first name I listed when you asked me about running backs.
I mean, there are a few Ravens out there that make sense. I mean, understanding the scheme first and foremost, whether it really on the defensive side of the ball, to be honest with you. But there are a couple names out there, not just the Harbaugh connection with Michigan, but just coming over from the Ravens as free agents that they can probably get on short-term deals that can be, again, bridge players. So I'm sure that we're going to see a few names here or there in relation to that. I know that there's even one that I'm a little it's weird because I have like a love-hate situation with him right now, but that's Geno Stone from the Ravens.
He was on my he was on my honorable mentions list.
Just feel away because of what he did to Herbert last year, and that late hit just kind of has been stewing with me for months now at this point. But no, another player that I think maybe we should keep an eye on because I don't think he's going to cost a ton. I was looking at some projections and talking about like 2 or 3 year deals that are in the range of about was like 13 17 or so million, depending on the years. And he makes sense. Also 24 years old, highly productive, and just keeps getting better with each passing year. And Derwin needs a running mate with experience. I don't think it behooves the Chargers to go the young route at free safety to pair alongside Derwin, but they're also probably going to need and there are some guys that are already on the roster that we talked about on Tuesday's show that might make some sense, but they're going to run some 3 safety sets, and you want some high-end players, the best you can get back there, and Stone probably fits the bill for a guy that's been productive, is young, and won't cost you a ton, that at least knocks out the second one. So if you got some of those younger guys on the roster right now, we don't know which direction they're going to go with them, but if they can prove themselves going into next season, then you've got the safety situation taken care of.
Geno Stone almost made my list. McKinney got the nod, but the more I watched Stone, the more I didn't really like his tackling so much. He was much better near the line of scrimmage. I liked him in the box. But he is definitely a cost-effective free safety that could make some sense, for sure. All right. So if you guys got questions, send them in, and we'll go over them. Any other honorable mentions that you guys didn't get to put on your list that you're thinking about? I mentioned Geno Stone, Connor Williams. Oh, I thought about Bryce Huff. What do you guys think about that Jets edge? I love his.
I think he's going to be expensive.
Yeah,
I do too.
I would love him. I just think he's going to be really expensive.
Yeah, he priced out for me, but still, I like his versatility a lot.
A couple names that I considered were actually from the tight end list, and I did not like the skill players very much. But one name that I considered was Mike Gesicki, who is going to come pretty cheap as possibly a tight end 2 if you don't wind up re-signing Gerald Everett.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I thought about as maybe more of like a tight end 2 or a tight end 3 with some upside, who I think would probably absolutely destroy defenses in this offensive scheme, is Noah Fant.
Oh, I was just
I
think I knew exactly who you're talking about.
Yep. I think he'd be perfect in this offensive scheme. I think Harbaugh is super familiar with him, and they'd know exactly how to use him. And I'd blow people away in this scheme. I think it would be a lot of fun.
He's only 26 too. He's young.
It feels like he's been around for a while, though. Yeah, he is still young.
Mm-hmm.
He's been around for like 5 years. He was a first-round pick, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, phenomenal athlete. Catches the ball well, can stretch the field. I mean, you think about the way the Ravens use guys like Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews in that offensive scheme to get vertical in the middle of the field.
Mm-hmm.
Fant would be so good in that role.
Yeah, he'd be the perfect Gerald Everett replacement if they couldn't re-sign Gerald Everett.
He'd be probably better than Everett.
Yeah.
I think.
From an athleticism profile,
Sure,
probably a better fit. And you're talking about somebody that you could really plug in there. I mean, as far as the blocking is concerned, that's still an issue. But if we're talking about someone who can just open up the middle of the field, stretch the seam, there isn't a better tight end in that free agency class to pull that off. I ended up looking at a bunch of safeties. I don't know. I just got on a safety roll, and there were a few names that popped out to me. And one is actually really funny because it's this he's always available. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, just always.
Yeah.
He may be a little difficult to control in the locker room. He might light some stuff on fire, but he would be another one of those renegade signings. You might be able to get him for just a year, and it probably cost you somewhere in between like $5 to $6 million to do it. But again, someone who's also highly productive, and know that we were a fan of his here in years past when he was coming out of Florida. So it's another way to make good on some of those favorites of the pod. But he just always seems to be available every single year, whether it's through trade or now in free agency. So he's got to be a hell of a headache. That's got to be what it is. They just can't. Like, if people thought Harbaugh burned hot or ran hot, then I don't know, this dude is inferno, because he just doesn't. He can't seem to stick around anywhere long term.
Yeah. How would you guys feel? They were in the chat. The former Dallas center, Biadish.
Biotish, yeah.
Biadish. Thank you.
I think he's going to be expensive, and I think Dallas is probably going to pay him, keep him. He's a pretty key part of their line, isn't he?
He got injured recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty sure he was dealing with an injury.
Yeah.
I think honestly, some of these guys, and there are a couple names like this who are coming off of seasons that were a bit injury marred. You may be able to get them at somewhat of a discount. I do think the Cowboys want to try to keep the offensive line intact as much as they can, just for continuity's sake. And it was just, I think Biadish was one of Jerry's guys, so I wouldn't be surprised if they pay him what's necessary to keep him around. But again, like, just a few names here. I think, you actually mentioned it, even with DJ Reader, Garrett. I mean, he's still going to cost. He's going to be expensive. But coming off of an injury, probably going to get a little bit shaved off of that contract because you don't know how he's going to return from it. But there are a couple names there. But I think Biadish, along with Jamie, I think he ends up back in Dallas. I wouldn't be shocked if they overpay for him also.
What about the veteran center, Brian Allen, from the Rams that just got cut?
Yeah.
Doesn't move the needle for me. Jamie?
Not really, no.
No, yeah. I mean, if you needed a plug and play for just punt the center this year, maybe, but
it's like the mother of Band-Aids.
Yeah. I'm not I'm not sure. All right. Again, feel free to send in questions. This one's from Casey. Is it plausible to get Zeke on a cheap 1 to 2 year deal?
It's plausible, but
wasn't his deal with the Patriots like $3 million or something? It wasn't very much. I don't think.
Yeah, it's plausible. I just don't know why.
That's exactly right. Why?
I think he's toast. I think he's completely cooked, and I just 1 million, 3 million, 4 million. I don't care. I don't want it.
Yeah, zero diesel left in that engine, man. He was never the highest end athlete. I mean, Zeke was, he was a monster coming out of Ohio State, but there are a lot of miles on him. And I mean, when he crashed hard. So, we're talking about somebody who would definitely be a part of a tandem, and he might end up being more of a short yardage back. And I mean, I think you could probably spend that roster spot on someone else who can do something similar, that may even be more effective than he will be at this point.
I'd rather give that money, in possibly even more money, to Gus Edwards, who I think is a better football player right now.
Fair point.
Yep. Oh yeah, I think there's much better options than Ezekiel Elliott. And yeah, he had a 3-year deal last year. His market value says, according to Spot Rack, is $2.7 million.
A 3-year deal or a $3 million?
$3 million deal. $3 million. And he's supposed to get 2.7 is his apparent market value. Still too expensive for me.
Somebody else that I really liked that had a really good year last year was Blake Cashman, a linebacker from the Texans. He's a free agent this year also. He had a career year with the Texans. He's only 27 years old. I don't think he would come at a bunch either. He's not a huge guy. I think he might be like 6'1", 230-ish, but he can do both. He can cover. He can come up and, stuff against the run. It's kind of more another one of those run and hit linebackers. So he can go sideline to sideline, but he offers kind of that versatility to play both the pass and the run. It could be a product of the fact that, the Texans just played, I'm not going to say above their heads, but, the new coaching regime came in and they worked a miracle with that team offensively. They struggled in the run game and they were still able to overcome it, but the defense was really solid, specifically against the run. So I don't know if this is kind of like a 1-year thing with Cashman or not, but it was a really significant jump in production year over year.
Okay, this is a great question from Stephen P. If you had to pick a wide receiver from this free agent class, who would you sign? Now imagine Mike Williams is traded and or cut. He is no longer on this roster. Keenan Allen is. He gets re-signed. Deals here. So they need a wide receiver 2, if QJ and Palmer fight for wide receiver 3. If you had to sign any wide receiver, who would it be? You guys got any names?
The thing about it is I have an idea, but the thing is I'm not sure if he's a wide receiver 2. So then you kind of end up with a little bit of a logjam there. But I was thinking Darnell Mooney from the Bears, just because he brings that speed aspect that the Chargers still so sorely need. But he also kind of, fell to the wayside a bit after DJ Moore got brought in to Chicago. So his role was lessened. And also Justin Fields, while he's, a quarterback that still is developing, isn't the most ready to run an offense full-fledged. He's more of a runner still than a passer at this point. So I think he suffered a little bit from that. So his production took a pretty big hit. But, beforehand, Mooney was playing pretty well. So my issue was just like finding where he would play in this offense, because he could be a number 2, but I don't necessarily think that's where he's best suited. I think he'd be better as a 3, but then what does that leave like Josh Palmer? And then I started kind of funneling through the names, and we still don't know what QJ is going to be moving forward. Hopefully he takes a large enough step, but you would assume that QJ would be jockeying for that wide receiver 2 spot next year. So where would Mooney play? And they're not going to be a huge spread offense. So you're not going to see a ton of 4 and 5 wide. So then it just becomes a scenario where, where is he getting on the field?
Yeah.
I have a couple names that I came up with. One is Josh Reynolds from the Lions. With Mike gone, he'd be a solid, like, contested catch possession kind of guy in the middle of the field. Another one that kind of stuck out to me, who isn't going to get top money and is pretty productive, is Gabriel Davis from the Bills, a guy who stretches the field, has some speed, is known for making big plays. Those are 2 guys who are kind of middle to lower end price range, who, not that I want to spend money on a wide receiver, but if I was going to, those would be guys that I would consider.
Yeah.
But I don't want to.
Yeah, me neither.
No. We make the rules here.
I would love Curtis Samuel in this offense. It's too much money.
Did you say Curtis Samuel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would be a hell of a lot of fun as a wide receiver too. It's not going to happen. It's too much money. He's probably going to get like 15 mil per year, but it's still probably not that. Probably like 12 or 13 mil, but he's exciting. He's fun. I like him. But realistically, I don't know if he's any good, but Devin Duvernay intrigues me a little bit. I'm not sure he's a wide receiver 2. No. I just don't know if maybe he needs a change of scenery, and he could be something. Just like a depth guy, maybe fighting for a wide receiver 3 with that group of QJ and Palmer.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because Duvernay was kind of on my list of prospects that I was pretty high on coming out of Texas a few years back. And it just hasn't materialized in Baltimore. But then again, you look at the wide receiver situation in Baltimore for the last few years, and they just can't seem to get it together. Just this last year, of course, with Zay, which not going to get back into that again. But Duvernay is probably someone we know what he can do as a special teams return guy. We already have one of those, but he's still someone that can come in and maybe give you some, if you do want to open things up a little bit, some wide receiver 3-4 snaps. I'm not sure if he'll ever be anything more than a 3, but still very dynamic. Yeah. Very dynamic with the ball in his hands. So he's another one of those guys that if you want to just get on some like smoke or bubble screens and allow him to do his thing after the catch, then cool. But it's just another weapon with a different skill set. And I think, with the Chargers wide receiver room, they need those varying skill sets to make the most of Herbert. So he's someone like you mentioned, Curtis Samuel, same guy, same type of idea there. Someone that you just need to get the ball in his hands and allow him to make plays. He's not someone that you're going to ask to run an extensive route tree. You're just looking at him as a playmaker, and the Chargers still sorely lack that.
All right. Yeah. Let's get some speed on this offense. So we'll just go through these last ones here from Juan. Can you get a similar trade package for Khalil Mack like the one Von Miller got traded for? maybe not for a third and a second and a third, but maybe a fourth and a fifth. Trading Mac would make sense, especially to a contender. I mentioned Detroit last podcast. That something to that vein makes sense.
I've heard the Ravens might be interested.
Ravens too. Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want him after the season he just had? So, I think you could get a pretty compelling package for him. I don't know that it would be 2 picks necessarily, but I could easily see them getting into something of a bidding war and getting maybe a day 2 pick of some sort for him. Maybe sweeten the pot by letting the team that's trading for him negotiate an extension. So they have some security there, and you get a better pick. But yeah, I could see potentially a day 2 pick or a very early day 3 pick, just based on the production and somebody thinking this is the last piece we need for a Super Bowl defense.
Yeah, 3rd and 4th round pick feels right. Like maybe a 3rd and 4th round pick, maybe a pick swap in a later year, swap a 6th or something, just to make things even, and then negotiate an extension. I could see a 3rd happening if you really got some teams fighting over them for sure.
3rd or 4th, the future pick later round, just a little bit of a sweetener. Absolutely. I do think there's going to be some commingling between the Chargers and the Ravens this year, one way or the other. So whether it's through free agency or trades, don't be shocked if you see a couple names just switch sides, however it happens. So yeah, Mac makes a ton of sense in Baltimore, makes a ton of sense with the Lions. Just, bring your best offer to the table. Let's get it done.
Yep. Kevin wants to know if we have any late round sleepers yet. No, we haven't got that far, so we'll move past that. Last one here. What 2 positions would you prefer the Chargers to address in free agency? What 2 positions would you like the Chargers to address early in the draft? We all mentioned some. What's your top 2 you want them to go after in free agency, Craig?
Center and corner.
Okay. Jamie?
I think for me, corner is definitely one, and then the second one would either be an interior offensive lineman or an edge.
Okay, so corner. We all agree on corner, but my other one was going to be linebacker. Linebacker and corner. So what 2 positions would you like the Chargers to address early in the draft? Wide receiver? Pretty easy one.
We're going to piss people off. It's definitely like wide receiver is 1 on my list. Like not need 1, but one of the 2. And the other is strange because it ends up both being on the offensive side of the ball. So they definitely need a wide receiver and they definitely need a tight end. I could actually look at a couple of other positions that are off the top of my head, but those are the 2 that stick out. And coincidentally, those are the ones everyone's talking about right now. But, if you take care of the corner and the center position, then I think that, you buy yourself some time and the ability to go after more weapons for Herbert because he needs them if you want to make the most of that quarterback situation. And keep in mind, it's the reason why Jim Harbaugh came to the Chargers in the first place. So he's going to want to give and equip Herbert with everything to make him as successful as possible. So to me, it's probably got to be an offensive weapon. Definitely wide receiver before tight end, especially if we're talking 5. We don't have to talk about the tight end at 5 thing again. People are going to tune off. But still, wide receiver and then a tight end at some point early on. And when we say early, I mean in between rounds 1 and 3.
Yeah, I think it's really important for them to not necessarily fix, but address the defense as well as they can in free agency so they can focus on skill players and offensive line in the draft. I think that's going to be where they're going to get the most bang for their buck. And I think they really need to we've talked about this at length, right? They need to get younger, more explosive, and less expensive at the offensive skill positions, at all of the offensive skill positions around Herbert so that they can build a core that's going to be around him for a long time. And I think that includes offensive line as well. They need to find a way to get less expensive on the offensive line with guys who are cost controlled for 3, 4, 5 years. So they don't have to be dishing out huge extensions aside from Slater anytime soon.
Yeah, if we're talking rounds 1 and 2, so I want them to figure out corner and linebacker in free agency so that they can get a skill player at 5, which is going to be wide receiver. Getting a tight end at some point would make a ton of sense. Getting 2 is probably your best bet. But in round, I think it's very top heavy. We talked a little bit about it. Center really could be a nice spot at the top of 2 if guys fall. But if they don't, you're in trouble. So offensive line is definitely a spot I want them to address early on. But wide receiver, I think, is probably going to be way up there too. And then tight end maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, they need to get better at wide receiver. Younger, faster, less expensive.
Period.
Not just fast, but explosive.
Yes.
We've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years now.
Ever.
At least, yeah, forever. They have to find some easy buttons on offense. And it's not just about the deep ball. It's about guys who can make people miss in space and turn a 5-yard catch into a 25-yard play. And they just don't have enough of that right now.
I distinctly remember a conversation about on the podcast about how Tevin Reese was not the answer at speed. And that's what is that? 14?
7th round, right?
That was our first year. Yeah.
2014?
That's the 7th round? So, 7th round, right? 6th or 7th?
Yeah.
7th,
right?
I think. Yeah.
Taylor.
And we got well, I'm sorry. Let me not say we. I wasn't a part of the pod then, but definitely was listening to you guys. I personally talked myself into that working because I was so desperate for any semblance of speed. And I fell in love with the deep speed. The dude was thin as a rail. He was small. There was no way that was really going to work out with the way that the offense was designed. I was just hoping upon all hopes that it was going to pan out, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah. So that's how long, Jamie? That's how long? 2014.
Long time. 10 years, 11 seasons. Long time.
But this is the year.
We can only hope.
Oh, boys. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're good. Thanks for tuning in. You got our list. We appreciate you guys. And draft is coming up very soon. We're starting it. So thanks, Jamie, Craig. Remember, at lightning_round, at top_flight3. I'm at Garrett, and we will see you next time.
Hey, really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
We don't ever ask to do this. Guys, if you would, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Share these vids. It helps us a ton just with visibility, and we want to keep bringing this stuff to you. So absolutely, we appreciate you tuning in, but just go that extra step. Doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that like button and share the stuff as well. Damn
it, Craig. Why don't we do that more often?
No worries. I will make it my job.
Okay. This is your job.
And if it doesn't happen, blame me.
Thanks. Like, subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the things. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.